Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for bearing with those technical difficulties. GoTo is always a challenge for me for some reason. So thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be recording this morning, and we were hoping that we could just hold questions until the end. So if you think of any questions as you hear the presentation, please hold them. And you can use the raise hand function at the end of the presentation and we'll try to unmute you, or you can type questions into the chat as we go and we'll address those all at the end. So the DLC will be hosting today's webinar, and you're going to be learning about the Clean Lighting Coalition, which they also refer to as CLiC. CLiC offers organizations and businesses an opportunity to publicly support global public health and reduce climate emissions through the promotion of LED lighting. Go to the next slide. Our two presenters today will be Naya Abaghi and Mike Scholand. So with that, I'm just going to pass things over to them and they'll give you a little bit more information about who they are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lonnie. Thanks for that intro. And hello, everybody. My name is Mike Scholand. I am the technical lead for the CLiC campaign. I have been working on lighting for 25 years now. I actually started back in South Africa in the 1990s promoting CFLs. And it tells you how long I've been involved, that now I'm working on a campaign to phase out CFLs. Trying to sort of make atonement for my sins of the past. I have worked as a lighting policy advisor in Canada, in Chile, in East Africa, West Africa, in the EU, several countries in the Middle East, and of course the United States as well. I worked for the Department of Energy as a contractor for about 10 years. I supported Jim Broderick's solid state lighting R&D program, which I know many of you are familiar with. And I also had a stint with the UN for 6 years, the Enlighten Initiative and United for Efficiency. So I've had quite an enjoyable career, I would say, working in this area of policies and programs promoting efficient lighting and LED in particular. And let me pass over to Naya to introduce herself. Go ahead, Naya.
Thanks, Mike, and hi, everyone. It's really nice to be virtually speaking with you. I'm calling in from Nairobi, and Mike's colleague here. I've had my experience actually has been focused on clean energy access. So working on a lot of programs to kind of support governments, manufacturers, distributors, and just ensure that consumers are getting access to good quality energy appliances. And I've done this work for about 15 years now, mostly focused on project management and business development at the moment. So the work with CLiC that I'm working on Mike with is relatively new for me. So really excited to be learning a lot, but it's something that I'm very passionate about as well, as we will be hearing much later in the program, because there's a lot of it that really affects the emerging market consumers.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Naya. Okay, so let me dive in and just say a few words about the CLiC, the Clean Lighting Coalition. So we are a coalition of industry, of public health authorities, of Mercury experts, and NGO partners who are all working together to eliminate mercury in lighting through this mechanism, an international mechanism called the Minamata Convention on Mercury. So the Minamata Convention on Mercury, I'm sure you've all heard of the Climate Change Convention, which started in Rio in 1992. So this one is much younger. It's named after a city in Japan that experienced extreme mercury poisoning in the 1950s, and they're still dealing with the cleanup there to this day. It was the Minamata Convention was started in 2013, and it has 131 parties. So 131 countries are members. The United States and Canada are there. China is there. Most of the major economies in the world are parties to the convention. and it seeks to eliminate mercury in products and processes worldwide. And so it's not just about lighting. Of course, lighting is there, and fluorescent lighting is exempted from regulation at the moment. But it also covers things like mercury in medical devices like thermometers, mercury in batteries, in cosmetics, skin lightening creams and things like that, even dental fillings, dental amalgams, some of them contain mercury. So it's looking across a range of products and processes, and is trying to lower and reduce the amount of mercury across the board. So as you all know, as LED companies and suppliers, you know that LED has accelerated its development in the last 5 years, has become much more cost effective and more energy efficient. And it's gotten to the point where we believe that the convention can phase out and eliminate those exemptions that allow fluorescent lighting to continue to exist in the market. And so this campaign, the CLiC campaign, is about raising awareness around that principle of removing the exemptions for fluorescent lighting from this convention, from the Minamata Convention. So there will be a conference of the parties. As I mentioned, it's a much younger COP, so this is called COP4. That's the 4th time the countries are coming together. That will be launched online in November of this year, November 2021. And the in-person negotiations where the discussions about these exemptions, the allowances and so on, will be taking place in the first half of next year. It'll either be around March or May of 2022. So that's when the in-person negotiations on the amendments will happen. And so I think you guys know this, but I'll just go over it briefly. The 4 key benefits that we talk about in the context of this campaign relating to clean lighting, to LED lighting. First is health. By removing mercury, you are protecting public health, you're protecting the environment, and the most vulnerable people are including pregnant women, infants, children, fetuses. Because mercury is a neurotoxin and attacks the central nervous system, the spinal cord, the brain, anytime you're developing those organs in your system, that's why it's obviously for these most vulnerable citizens, it creates mercury is its most toxic. So it's actually yeah, there's a big health benefit to getting rid of mercury. It's been taught, you know, fluorescent lighting has been the workhorse of industry, as I've said in the past. It's, you know, been around for 70 years, and whenever you needed a lot of light, it was a great source. And people tolerated the health risk of carrying mercury into their homes and having it in their offices because of that benefit. But now LED has surpassed that. The efficiency, the cost effectiveness has surpassed that, and it's actually time that we can say farewell to fluorescent. On the economic side, my favorite website to quote is actually LEDvance. I know someone from LEDvance was registered at least to be with us today. They identify a payback period for one of their products, and the T8 product, that could be as short as 4 months. In retrofitting, that is quite quick. I've done calculations at 5 and 6 months. Some are a little longer, but essentially the payback is often less than a year. And when that's the case, you can fit it into one fiscal year cycle. It's much easier for building owners and building managers to do those upgrades. And of course, in addition to lower energy bills, there are fewer lamp changes, LED having 2 to 3 times longer life. On the environmental side, of course, we talked about removing mercury from the supply chain, the living space, also broken bulbs ending up in the landfill. But because of the energy savings, we also have a big benefit on CO2 emissions. And we calculate if this phase out by 2025 of fluorescent lighting is adopted by the convention, it would accelerate the phase in of LED and thereby save 3.5 gigatons of CO2. When you look at the forecasts for fluorescent lamp sales going out into the future, if you can convert those to LED, it'll save 3.5 gigatons of CO2 globally. So very significant benefit there for the climate. And there's also an equity issue to this. This is a technology which I'll show you in a couple of slides. Countries and the European countries have made decisions to start phasing out and step away from this technology, from fluorescent. However, it would carry on being sold to countries in Latin America, in Africa, and elsewhere, but in less developed parts of the world. And there's a question whether that's equitable or not. Why shouldn't those countries, as they develop on a more sustainable path, develop on a greener path, not have the burden of the mercury toxicity in their homes and offices and landfills at the same time? So that's something else to consider. And then finally, on the right here, on the technology side, you all know this, LED is mercury free. It is retrofittable directly into existing fixtures. In Europe, I did a calculation, 91 to 93% of the existing stock, the existing fluorescent lamp fixtures in Europe can accept a LED retrofit tube from one of the major 3 suppliers, just based on the compatibility tables published on the industry websites. So very, very good compatibility with existing fixtures and sockets and obviously ballasts. 50% energy savings I mentioned, and of course you all know LED is high quality lighting. So the campaign, we're working on 3 different work streams. We're engaging with governments, providing information to them about LED technology, about the cost effectiveness, about the benefits, which I've just outlined for you. And we're trying to support a network of champion countries and voting blocs who will be attending the Minamata Convention and supporting the phase out of fluorescent. We're working with local health authorities and local NGOs, the environmental advocates, also education. That's one of the areas I'm working on now, reaching out to schools and to education authorities in the governments because of the strong connection between eliminating mercury and public health, and particularly children who are vulnerable to mercury exposure. So we want to build public awareness and support for phasing out of fluorescent. And then Renaya will speak about this on her slides when she takes over in just a couple, about the private sector. So the companies that are developing, innovating, and promoting LED lighting, supporting them and bringing them together into the coalition so that we can work together and get as much support as possible for the phase out, which will then open up new markets for LED products. And so that's highlighting the private sector benefits. And as I say, Naya will get to that. So earlier this year, back on the 30th of April, an amendment was submitted to the Minamata Convention, and it was submitted by 36 countries in Africa. So all of the parties to the convention in the African region got together and submitted a proposal to the Secretariat for the Minamata Convention, and they are calling for a phase out of integrally ballasted CFLs, so CFLI, if you will, by the end of 2024. A phase out of linear fluorescent lamps, that's all diameters, so T12, T8, T5, by the end of 2025, and a phase out of cold cathode fluorescent and external electrode fluorescent, which, as you probably know, these are the old technology for backlit displays, which is really no longer used, and that's set for 2024. So these are the 3 exemptions for fluorescent technology that were in the Minamata Convention. And so our work now is to support this amendment from the African region and to try and generate support for that globally. There is a hyperlink, by the way, Lonnie will be sending these slides around, and there's a hyperlink here if you want to click on it to download the actual amendment. Now, this is my last slide, and I apologize for the amount of text on it. I wanted to show you some developments happening in Europe and how this proposal from Africa is in line with some of the trends that's happening on the EU side. So the first column here is the Minamata Convention. So Annex A, which I was just talking about, it was drafted in October of 2013. You can click on this link to see a copy of it. And essentially, these are the allowances. CFLs less than 30 watts are allowed to have up to 5 milligrams of mercury. Linear fluorescents, if they're the rare earth or triband phosphor, they call it, they're allowed up to 5 milligrams. If it's a halophosphate, they can go up to 10. And then CCFL and EFL had a whole set of categories here with a range from 3.5 to 13 milligrams, depending on the length of the tubes. So the proposal from the African amendment, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is to phase out CFL-I in 2024, for linear fluorescence in 2025, and CCFL and EFL in 2024. So that's what these two columns are. And now on the Europe side, Europe has two regulations, well, it has many, but two regulations that apply to this product that I'll speak about today. One is the Eco-Design Directive. Eco-Design sets minimum performance standards. And the second is the ROS Directive, the Restriction of Hazardous Substances, and that limits the use of hazardous chemicals. And there's 10 of them that are covered by the ROS Directive, of which mercury is one. And so on eco-design, Europe made a decision back in December 2019. So this is a final law now. You can click here to see a copy of it. We are phasing out in Europe CFL-I on the 1st of September 2021. So just a couple of months left for CFL-I, and then those will be illegal to be sold in Europe. For T12s, they are also being phased out in a couple of months' time. That, you know, these I don't even see them in the stores now. In fact, over here, I'm based in London, by the way. I forgot to mention that. My colleague Naya is in Nairobi, in Kenya. Then on the T8 side, Europe is phasing out 2-foot, 4-foot, and 5-foot T8s on the 1st of September 2023. So other lengths are allowed. So the 6-foot is still allowed, the 3-foot is still allowed, but these very popular lengths, particularly the 4-foot, are going to be phased out in September 2023. So just over 2 years' time from now, and that's all set in law. CCFL and the EEFL are being phased out in September of this year, as are T2, just basically other fluorescent lamps. They're all going under that category. And what happened just a couple of weeks ago, the European Commission published some proposed amendments to the ROS Directive. So I've got these labeled as draft in this column because they're not; these are not law yet. They're just proposed by the Commission, and they're published separately. So you have to click on each of these individual links to see what I'm discussing in the rows. But they are proposing to phase out CFL-I within 12 months of publication in the official journal. So I estimate that will be around the middle of 2023 when that happens, and they're already phased out by eco-design. So it's kind of just a procedural exercise that they're doing it. The CFL pin-based are being phased out after 18 months. So by the end of 2023, we expect CFL pin-based to go, CFL NIs. And then you can see here, T12s are expected to be phased out in 2023 under ROS, so that they're already going under eco-design. So those won't even be there. But the other lengths of T8 will be phased out in late 2023. So in fact, the whole category of T8 will go between these two directives. And the T5 as well, the T5 linears are scheduled to be phased out after 18 months. So the expectation is by the late 2023 that will go as well. So you see the linear fluorescent between these two regulations is expected to be gone by the end of 2023, 2 years earlier than what's being proposed in the African amendment here. On the CCFL and EFL, the Commission proposed a 5-year extension for these. I'm not really sure why that happened, but I'll be commenting on that and suggesting that they adopt a similar phase out, since eco-design has already taken care of it. And then down here under some other links, they have long life, a certain category 2A5, which is slated to be phased out after 12 months. And then they're offering a 3-year extension to some other category 2B3. So this is the update from Europe, which I wanted to highlight. In the context of what's happening with the Minamata Convention and the African Amendment, you can see there's a trend here of transitioning the markets away from fluorescent, and by moving to LED, we start to see the benefits that I was highlighting earlier. And this is my last slide before I hand over to Naya. You're all familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we looked through all of the criteria for these 17 SDGs, they're called, and we identified 8 of them which are aligned with the principles. Phasing out fluorescent aligns with the principles of these 8 SDGs, being the health of human beings, of course, the first one that we're talking about, but also affordable clean energy, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities. I mentioned the equity issue of selling old technology to emerging and developing countries, having sustainable developments in communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, the 3.5 gigatons of CO2 that could be saved globally from phasing out. And then of course, life below water, because a lot of mercury ends up in the water system through water tables, rivers, and eventually oceans, and then the fish become poisoned. And that's actually what happened in Minamata originally. It was a CISO corporation dumping methyl mercury into the bay, and then the people were eating the fish and developing mercury poisoning from that. So that's all I wanted to say on the overview of the campaign, the African Amendment, and the EU update. And now I'll pass over to Naya to talk about why you might be interested in joining CLiC. Naya?
Great, thanks so much, Mike. And so I think that, one thing I would like to emphasize here is that, you as Mike has already explained to us, the transition to LEDs is already happening. And so this coalition is just giving stakeholders, companies like yourselves and organizations, a way for us to work together to kind of accelerate the elimination of mercury containing lighting through the Minamata Convention on Mercury. And so this is just to help transform global markets, and really is this issue of equity that I'm very particularly passionate about sitting in Nairobi, Kenya. I think that we should just hold hands together as a global world, that Africa and other emerging markets should not be used as dumping grounds for outdated technologies. And then we just want to build public awareness and sensitize markets on the availability and the superior quality of alternatives to CFLs, which you all know this much better than I do. And as Mike has already explained, they're LED alternatives for a wide variety of users. And so what we are offering our private sector partners is an opportunity to join together with a global coalition of stakeholders who believe in this global transition to good quality lighting, and then just kind of like fostering that dialogue and working together with policymakers and governments to ensure that their consumers are protected. And then, this gives you an opportunity to be with partners who stand and believe in common objectives. And then finally, through a lot of the work that we're doing, we're building a huge database of information, and this is going to include information on the global markets, technical availability of LEDs, environmental and economic feasibility, and this information is what we'll be using to build that evidence base and case for governments when they meet at the Minamata Convention to vote for the phase out of lighting. But this is information that we'll make available to our partners as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so joining the Clean Coalition is free and easy. All we're asking our partners to do is to sign a pledge, and the pledge basically summarizes all of the information that we've talked about today. It just says that you as an organization, you commit to supporting that global transition to clean lighting. You are committed to advocating and supporting the phase out of a complete ban on the manufacture, sale, distribution, and or installation of fluorescent lighting. And finally, you're just advocating, you're going to commit to advocating for the support of an equitable transition to clean lighting, and through whatever mediums that you have available to you. So this could be social media, through blogs or webinars or whatever it is. But that's all we're asking our partners to commit to. And this is it's kind of like a win-win, really, right? Because I think all organizations have a green commitment, and this is just a way to be together with a large group of partners and show your consumers, show your stakeholders that you're not just like walking the walk, you're not just talking the talk, but you're joining together with this with a group of large partners looking to do something very unique. There's not going to be an opportunity like this anytime soon. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the benefits of joining the coalition. So what we'll be doing, as I've kind of already alluded to, is by joining the coalition and signing the pledge, basically we want to bring the partners together and put your logo on our website, use your logo in our promotional materials, and then we're going to be we're already producing a lot of really good videos that kind of just like explain the importance of clean lighting, the work that the industry has already done in ensuring that consumers will be served by good products. And so this is content that's going to be that we're sharing globally with global press. And then in addition to this, Mike, could you please jump to the next slide? Here I want to give you just like a brief glimpse of some of our partners already. Obviously the DLC, who's given us this platform to be able to talk to you. But this is just like some global manufacturers from around the world. Represented on this slide are companies from Europe, from Latin America, from the US, as well as Africa and Asia. Next slide, please. And then finally, quite recently, we got an endorsement from Suji Nakamura, who you probably all know, the Nobel Prize for Physics laureate for his invention of the blue light LED. And on this slide, there's just a quote from him that I'll quickly read through as he endorsed the coalition. And so he just says here that the proposed amendment to the Minamata Convention and implementation of national level regulations to phase out fluorescent lighting by 2025, countries can accelerate that transition to LED lighting technology to benefit people and the planet. So this is, we're well aligned with a lot of just like really influential people in the industry, and we're just inviting you as well to join the coalition and help us build that strong evidence base that governments need, that the time is now to completely phase out fluorescence and accelerate the LED market. Next slide, please.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I guess we can take questions, comments from you now. Lani, I don't know if there are any questions or comments that were typed in the chat box. Would be also happy to answer those.
Yeah,
but this is okay.
Sorry, no questions have come in yet. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat or the questions pane, or you can use the raise hand if you'd prefer, and I can unmute you. So we'll give folks a minute if they can think of any questions.
Lonnie, it looks like there might be a question. Pratik Patel.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. I'm not able to unmute. Maybe I can unmute all. Trying to unmute all. I don't think I'm. Yeah.
I think it might have.
I'm unable to unmute everyone. I think it might be a setting in the GoToWebinar. So if you have a question and you've raised your hand, just please feel free to type it into the chat.
Yeah, particularly also try and unmute yourself as well. I just hit the unmute button, and I think it might be working now.
We have one question. It says, how are we able to join the CLiC organization?
Yeah, great question. So what we'll be doing after this call is we will circulate our industry pledge. We'll send that to Lani, who will send it to you as well. And all we ask is that you simply sign it and then send it back to us with your high resolution logo so that we can add it onto our website. And that's it. It's very easy.
Great. I don't see any other questions. So I think if, that's all we have.
Actually, I think, are these? Oh, sorry, it was, okay, folks were just saying yes, they could hear us at the beginning. I see the question marks in the column, but they're not new questions, they're just old ones. Yep.
Yes, yep. Okay, well, Naya, Mike, thank you so much for providing us all with the information. I hope everyone found it informative. And like we said, we will, I will be circulating the webinar recording and a copy of the slides as well as the industry pledge. So thank you everyone for attending and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Lani. Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.